Hi, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing? So it's Dave Dobbs here, and it's the 21st of August. And apologies, I haven't made a video for a while. It's been I just needed a total break from the whole Planet X thing, knowing what's coming in and what's coming up. I mean, you know, if you've watched my timeline for this long, you will know every aspect about what I'm about to say, because we've been at this juncture. 2015, we came to this juncture. 2016, we came to this juncture. 2017, we came to this juncture. 2018, we came to this same juncture. And this juncture where we're coming to now is the juncture that it's kind of all revolves around, really, in my workings, what we come to, around about, because of the sighting that we had, because of the seismology that we had, if you like, in early July, with the earthquake in California. And I was expecting much, much bigger tremors to come later. And we don't know what's going to happen later. We only know where it is. We just don't know. It's, we're not quite sure of the exact angle. And we're not quite sure of the overall proximity. But we know when the passage is going to happen. That aspect of early July going up to August, because of Matt Rogers' shot on the 16th of August, 2016, the really famous one. Well, let me just very quickly, whilst I'm running this, let me just share this and just go over to, maybe I'll just come onto this. I'll just run this in the background as we're talking about this, as we're talking about the flyby, as the flybys that are in question, that has led us to what date are we starting on here? So we're starting around about the 24th of December 2015. So we'll just keep that running in the background, because remember as this plays here, and we're looking at all the different sightings that we've seen since 2015, or many of them, and we look at this orbital track here. If I just, before I come out, I'm just going to stop that share and very quickly switch over and look at we'll go to Safari, I think. And what have we got in Safari? We've obviously got the this we've talked a lot about how the how, if you like, I'm scanning across, but really what it actually looks like when, well, let's just play that one shake, what it actually looks like in a three-dimensional view of the solar system. This would be what it would look like as it's passing through. And the reason I have that is that aspect there. And though it doesn't look like it, you've actually got three aspects that affect us. And of course, in that, and I don't know if because you've got the bit coming in under, the bit cutting through, and the bit going down, and they actually create three separate dynamics, three separate crossing points, which is obviously the Carlos Ferrada point in 1939, the midway point when Chernobyl happened, and Kilauea and Krakatoa were last kicked off, in 86, 87, and when the big storm in 87, and that sort of stuff, the midway point, and of course the point we're in now. And just going back to that, you can see that we finally realised that all these different sightings, and we can only piece this together with the evidence, because this is all just based on astronomical sightings. We realise there's two orbital rings, and so now, and they're coming down, passing through the dwarf planet itself, never really crossing the ecliptic, as we'll just see again here. Let me just run that forward, because we'll click back to the other, where we're going to go through all the other sightings again, but we're just going to keep that playing in the background, simply because at this point, can you see how it doesn't necessarily follow to cross the ecliptic? And so when we see Carlos Rada's model, where we are giving one system with motion, bringing one system with motion through something that is completely static, through our solar system, holding it in this static, sort of hovering, kind of like this Copernicus 400-year-old model. And so just stopping that share, we're going to just go back to there, and we're going to go back to, I believe we were, what were we playing? We were in QuickTime, weren't we? That's one, I believe, and hopefully you're seeing that one. So we just keep that playing, understanding that as that's going around, what seems to be one orbital track in the earlier model before I updated it, because I haven't put all the movements into the new model, but it is effectively the same as this, except that this half and this half are actually two separate twin tail objects. And that's obviously what we've experimented from. But nonetheless, that, you know, one's orbiting inside the other, and it's finally realizing this 4-day anomaly has led us to understanding that this actually makes up two twin tail objects. And we've seen the two together quite a few times, and finally piecing it together has been a bit of a process. But nonetheless, I'll just let that play, because that starts, you know, with the big Brexit vote. We just had the Matt Rogers shot there, the really famous one that I mentioned. This was, you know, the big earthquake on the, well, it's just going too fast really, but you're just getting the idea of the movements of it, because we're going to come round to, you remember the ESO shot on the 17th of August 2017, and then, you know, we saw these shots coming in, and this is the time we're coming up to again here. And then obviously we're coming around to, you remember when we saw Kilauea going absolutely crazy, and then Mars, you know, the Mars kind of like, this is just before Mars erupted and volcanoes. And remember, Mars's predominant gas is carbon dioxide, so we assume that something's chucking out carbon dioxide. We've got kind of Walt Thornhill from the Thunderbolt project telling us they're all kind of caused by thunderbolts. And then one of the volcanoes, it's clearly a volcano, it looks like a volcano, just like Valles Marianis is clearly the place where all the water drained down in a massive dimensional tear and came up on another planet called Earth and caused the Great Flood. All of this is desperate to hide this, because, guys, when we remember the big shot, and then just after this shot, around about the same time, I said, you're going to have a massive sighting, and the sighting came in, and then, of course, I'd made the video saying that we expect gravitational anomalies, oceanic anomalies, and this shot had come in, and then we'd had all the big shots, like, you know, Krakatoa blows the top off. All these amazing shots come through around about this kind of December, January time. Remember, we had all the asteroids as well, that I'll show you those in a sec, but we're just gonna come round, and we come to, this is the time of tsunamis, but it should still be behind us. The full moon is on 15th of August and 14th of September. See, I've said there because I was expecting that to be the most, but I said that because I'm imagining that was the point it was going to cross through over here. But actually, this, well, not even that far. We need to go slightly round about this point here. And of course, you know, obviously we're going to get the point where we're going to get the big crossing, which I'm assuming is going to be, yeah, I mean, I thought it was going to be last year because I was expecting it to be massive, and it really was. I mean, if that's not evidence that it flew by and it was massive, and like I say, we saw the asteroids, we'll get to those, but we can imagine that this, this point here, if we now come over to, if we stop the share and we come back to Safari, where's Safari? I'll share that over there. If we come back to Safari, and we come to the date calculator, we have 22nd of October, which in the 200, which is that point of the 200-day cycle. Remember that this is, you know, the 5th of August 2011. Add 200 days and repeat it 20 times to give us all the points. This thing moves like this thing. Remember, this is 2 planets that bring about. This is the most incredible thing. This is 2 separate twin-tail objects that work together to bring us this pattern. This is the most incredible thing about this. This is the absolute most incredible thing about this. And within this, there's this 4-day anomaly, and I've covered this in many times in my videos. So this is one of the big aspects that I've brought you, and this is how I've managed to calculate all the flybys. And this has Steve Olson had NFC. You know, Steve Olson was the one who came up with the name, the Dobbs timeline, which you see so much of, and so many people are kind of still kind of think of me as think of my timeline as based on the original timeline. But of course, it's been this developing timeline that has finally enabled us to kind of understand where Carlos Ferrada was coming from and everything else like that, and understand how Planet X causes the shift of nuclear power stations to split open. So we know what's coming up. And now if we say the 22nd of October 2019, and remember the first flyby that really affected Britain was on the 23rd of June when we had the floods and everything else like that, and it really began for real in Britain at that point. Okay, it wasn't massive, but it was still pretty big. That's when, you know, it flooded at Glastonbury, it flooded in London, they had the election, no one could get to the voting things because it would just rain everywhere. I mean, it wasn't as bad as that, but it was pretty bad at Glastonbury. I mean, the whole thing was... But, so what's the next phase in this? Well, the next phase is understanding what they're going to likely do and what they want to bring about. And, you know, many people know me for this timeline, but some people know me obviously for my whole Mars story of how the water from the Great Flood came from Mars. And what I believe is a Large Hadron Collider that they detonated. And it was that destroyed Mars. It wasn't Planet X. It was the fear of what Planet X would do that made them bail out, because they were led to believe that this thing would annihilate them. And so they bailed out. And they used the Large Hadron Collider, and Valles Marianas is where the water drained out. And you can see all the drainage holes, even though we have kind of like all these different theories desperately trying to tell us it was caused by a plasma charge. It's so obvious that that you can see the water. I won't get it up on video now because I haven't selected that, and it just adds, well, I just won't get it up right now if you don't mind, because I'm going to have to get up in the shape. And I've been through it so many times and shown where the water came up through kind of like into what I say, what is the Emperor, now called the Emperor. It was the Emperor seamount chain, and then it became the Emperor Hawaiian seamount chain when, in about 2001, really, around about that sort of time, when it was finally acknowledged that the Hawaii is part of that same underwater volcanic range of underwater volcanoes, and it runs all the way up to the Kamchatka Peninsula. It's one long line, and of course, if you're at the top of that is this massive, great tear shape at the very top of the Pacific Basin. So we can see where it ripped open, and we can see this is so thin. This substrate here, this basalt substrate that the Pacific sits on. This is why the Pacific Basin is such a predominant volcanic area, because it's all so new. This story is so new. You're being led to believe it's billions of years old, and this is all such a recent story. It's all such a recent occurrence. And the story you're in is a story that's trying to stop humanity ever awakening. And this is a big awakening time for humanity, because there's so much on the table at the moment. Now, at this time on Mars, this is when they would have detonated their Large Hadron Collider. this has always been what I'm of mind when Nostradamus was talking about beware of, you know, he talked about the rapos. I mean, there's different translations. It was written in French, and there's different translations, so we can't get lost in the translations because everything's back to front. The French say everything back to front, or they would argue in terms of Latin that actually in English, we say everything back to front. So we can't get too lost in the translation because it's being translated from, like I say, French to English. But the beware of the contrary rapos, you know, when the air becomes dry. And he also talked about when gold turns to iron. And of course, in a vision, you know, tungsten and iron would look very similar. And of course, all those gold bars that were shipped out to China when they repatriated loads of their gold, or was turning loads of their dollars into gold. It turns out the loads of the gold coming from America apparently was turning into had got tungsten inside of it, and hadn't been disguised as gold. And so there's this kind of here, I think, is this time when I was shown this, you know, as in my process of writing Laughing Gas and going through this. I went through, I literally got on a plane when I first started doing this whole process, and jumped on the plane and flew out to India on the day they were flying up the Large Hadron Collider, which was the 10th, the 9th, the 8th. And I'm of a mind that they really thought that last year was going to be the closest year. By their mathematics, they absolutely thought that last year was going to be the closest year. And then they started realizing that it was later. And I would have, you know, because of the size of it and everything else like that, you would have had to assume, my God, it really could come next year. But actually, it looks like it came a year later, because if I go from, you know, we're just judging from the 10th to the 9th to the 8th, it actually, including the bang at the end, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, bang, which would have been the day they fired it up. That would have taken you from 2008 to the point, it would have taken you to 2018. And that's why I was always thinking, and it so looked like it was going to be last year because it was so big, but it just went by us before. And so by the time we got there, we could only see the tail, which was, of course, I'm just trying to think if I've got that video up anywhere. Maybe I haven't. It was kind of, that was the asteroids, remember? And we literally saw them, wrap the news, put them up, and at the end of December, or latter part of December, and we literally saw them, in thousands of them in the day sky. And of course, you know, third phase of the moon and Mr. MBB 333 just put up another very similar sighting, which was late July, and we knew we were right next to the tail. I have just put the thumbnail of his some of the thumbnails of his previous videos, because he also posted, you know, around about the time where he Earth and the Sun erupt. See, this was 6 days ago. So this was at the time of the full moon. And I was expecting to see some pretty big, because it was around about the 15th of August. And I thought, what the hell's going to happen? Earth and the Sun erupt within hours of each other. So we knew we had something. And there'd been some, just before that, he's showing some fantastic skies here at the moment. And we're expecting to see all these incredible kind of like, it's starting to get obvious. Earth's sky is changing, and of course, this thing is going to come. We are coming into this big phase now, and of course, if we are expecting it, you know, the new moon. If we go to the new moon, full moon phase is 2019. We're talking about October. We're talking about the 28th is the new moon, and that's the most likeliest date that is going to affect us. And of course, the Brexit day is on the 30th. And so, isn't it ironic that they are the beginning of the Brexit process and the end of the Brexit process, this this leave date, even though they've just announced that in 10 days they're going to terminate all meetings with the EU. So they're really putting up the pressure, which means that, we're talking about 700 trillion US dollars that's pumped into Europe via the City of London. And they're talking about breaking, you're talking about rattling this kind of the whole systems really heavily at the moment with this 10-day warning. This is pressure on Europe to sign a specific deal and so the pressure is building because they are desperate to get all this sorted out before this occurs, because if this doesn't work for them, they are pushing for their agenda, and this agenda actually is about the Large Hadron Collider. Just think about what I've told you over the period. I've told you about the time. These were all the messages that came through to me. I never understood why it would be so relevant to, why we were trying to repeat what happened on Mars just before this thing flew by. And we know it flies by Mars because we'd seen it before. And we remember when the June 17th sighting in 2018 occurred, and I was like, guys, that just cannot be there. But in fact, it is there. We can just try and pretend it's not there. Like Wall Thornhill would desperately try and pretend that volcano just didn't go off on Mars. Like Wall Thornhill would desperately try and pretend that massive great plasma charge, the only one we've ever seen, which charged directly between what is clearly Jupiter and this massive dwarf planet, which were absolutely massive. It was the most spectacular shot that Jeff B got off a webcam, you know what I mean, and put it up, and anyone could go onto that same webcam and see it at the time when it came up. And Walt Thornhill would not cover that because it blows his theory apart. Because if he can blow that theory apart, then he can stop you seeing what caused the destruction, the absolute destruction of Mars, and what we are trying to recreate on this earth, because the agenda which rules over us is desperately trying to say, if we can't have it, if we can't have Earth, no one can have Earth. We'll drive it into the earth and we'll destroy it. And only with an awakening from humanity right now, humanity is at the point when it can awake right now. I tell you, I have what tide as blood coursing through my blood, part of my heritage. And so do you. And this is what this is really all about, is that we are now sitting on all the knowledge of the woes of war. And they desperately want to take complete control of humanity and drive us into the dirt. And this is all about free trade deals where we open ourselves up to being carved up in a way that we cannot believe. We are absolutely sold down the line if we enter into these free trade deals. And you've seen what's happened to Canada and all these, and how Canada's being sued. And I know I keep going on about this, but we're coming to that point now, and unless we change this direction, Jeremy Corbyn doesn't want it. He doesn't know whether he should sort of engage and try and stop, and call a vote of what do they call it? A lack of confidence or incompetence, whatever they want to call it, but whether he wants to call that out, and whether the Lib Dems whether they want to come together and do that. But they're concerned if they do that, they might lose. What they might not be fully understanding is if this goes ahead, they lose everything. They lose everything. You lose so much more than you can ever realize, because you hold a gun under the table to not just Europe, the whole world. You think you can drop back onto free trade, world trade rules, but Britain created the World Trade Organization. We're in a precarious situation now, and we've got some big flybys coming in, and directly after, when this leaving on October the 30th, it's such a terrifying time. It's just around, like I say, it's around the 28th. The 30th, you're going to see a big seismic activity, and it's not nearly as big because we know the point of the earthquake in the only real big seismic activity we've had this year in the middle of this year so far, you know, to around about that time when we're expecting to get that crossing, which is so this point here is where we had the early July. Where was I expecting it to be? I can just about see. I've got it down as August, September because I was always of a mind it was August, September, but of course that has really been. I mean, you can't see it here, but where you see this section here, where this section here has this bottom section of this section here is the bit that's been causing the midway point. This has been the August point. And so I'm of mind that both of these are occurring quite close to each other anyway, causing a lot of confusion. This cycle, where this cycle crosses and where this cycle crosses, they're in quite close proximity. You know, there's a short period in, so it's very difficult to get, you know, we get a lot of confusion. And so this point was actually, like I say, kind of about the 3rd or the 4th of July. That was the closest point, remembering that was the point of either the full or the new moon. So that's the point that exacerbates this most of all. Remember Carlos Rada's point, he said it would occur on the 24th, but the eclipse itself, the full moon or the dark moon happened on the 20th. And so that's when the earthquake struck, because it's the moon's alignment with the sun and earth which seems to magnify this. And so this point, because this has to go all the way around in this stage of the cycle, it can be less than 6 months, but it cannot be more than 6 months because of the fundamentals of the dynamics of our solar system, because of the way in which this moves. It means that if this happened in early July, so we've got basically all of July, all of August, all of September, all of October, all of November, and most of December. We're talking about this flyby coming in. And this would have been why the Catholics changed the calendar, because we can only work this out. You know, it takes so long because we're plotting this. We're building the shape of our solar system by all of these movements. We're not throwing belief at this. We're just waiting to see by the sightings and the seismology and the volcanoes how and when this timing will occur. And now I can pretty much guarantee you that though we're going to get this sinking of alignment, you know, they're both going to meet. We should overtake it, but it's going to be very tight. But we're going to meet. This isn't going to be around about the 20th of January this time. This is going to be in late December. It can't be later than that. By that sighting by the earthquake on the 3rd of June, and you know, Alex Lujan's shot also, it's around about that same time. We're talking about the 25th of December. We're talking about Christmas time, kind of like Christmas time kind of effect. And of course, I think if I go up to, if I share my video again and we go to, and I go back to Safari and I look at that's the full moon times. So the full moon was on, I'm more interested in the new moon because that's going to be the one that's going to be nearer on the 26th. Is that right? December 12th. Neep is the 19th, and the dark moon's on the 26th. So we're talking about Christmas Day, Boxing Day. This isn't by chance, guys. Do you think that no one knows the time of this? No, guys, they know exactly what's going on. This is a very orchestrated thing. So there's the next day. You'll know this point of the cycle now. You know it so well. I mean, you can all throw your little spin at it. Some of you can say, oh, it's grand solar minimum. And some of you can say it's, oh, I don't know what it is. And some of you can say, oh, it's very confusing. It's whatever you want to call it. But I've done this long enough now that I have more than proved my theory. I have shown you a predictive pattern. You know, I've been a little bit incorrect about this, kind of like August, September, August alignments. I mean, the September time, last year was absolutely correct. And, I did say on the sort of like after the big earthquakes in early July, I was just like in mid-July, around about the full moon or the new moon, whichever one it was, we'd expect to see something. Of course, we had 12,000 mini quakes in California. It was one of the highest counts. Mr. MBB again put it up. He's very on the pulse, and I love his videos. I love his dedication, and I love his intelligence. And also kind of like the way he abstains from having an opinion about so much stuff. Shows incredible intelligence. And then at the end of it, it's like, I don't know what it is. Genius on every level. The light's going, guys. I really wish you good luck here. Are you starting to see how this Brexit thing, and this affects both of us, all sides on either side of the Atlantic, it affects the whole of Europe, it affects Britain. And America, don't forget, you are doing a deal with a free trade deal. This runs both ways. You think it's Britain going under your wheels. But what happens if the shoe's actually on the other foot? What happens if you're the ones doing a deal with the devil? At the moment, it seems like you're ravaging Canada, doesn't it? 300 court cases on this kind of new courtroom process. It's everything the Brexiteers said, we want our sovereignty, and it's everything they're walking into, a backstage courtroom process. These member state dispute systems which each one costs minimum 10 billion, many in hundreds of billions. Canada has not won one of them. Each one is absolutely draining Canada of everything. They cannot win these court cases. They take a very long time. They're all closed off to protect each company's intellectual property. And you can't win. They can cripple a country. You've completely surrendered everything. If they wanted to lobby to do anything to you, to your land, to your water, to your children, to your agriculture, on any level, anything, they have the right to sue you for values greater than some countries' GDP. You cannot stand in the way. When you sign up to this, you sign up to this as a judicial system. It has power over you, and you agree to comply, and you do not know what happens if you don't comply. But guys, you're in this last phase now. I wish you so much luck for this. You've seen all my five. I have been correct about most of my timelines. I've had to work it and change it. I've been willing to advance it. I told you about the whole Brexit thing and told you, guys, don't leave Europe. Try to see through it. Try to understand Europe didn't do it. Try to understand that you're just being absolutely subverted. America is as terrible for you as it is for us, as on every level. It's Europe. Don't be sucked in by this. Don't be sucked in by this 10-day fear mongering. We're going to pull out in 10 days. This is Britain and the forces that are truly behind Britain desperately trying to recreate, because if they can get Britain to go off the edge and do this and crash the British economy, they can create the anger, the hunger that they will create the anger, so they can get their war. And it is the war that they want to kickstart. When this thing comes through, and they can only really get that, they'll only effectively get that off the ground if they can create the hunger. And that hunger will create the anger, and the anger creates the blame. And you know how this game works. And all this division, Brexit has ripped my country down the line. You can see all this environmental talk where I keep going on about how can people keep going on about carbon dioxide when they can see all the carbon dioxide spewing out the volcanoes, and yet they're saying, even though you can see that volcanoes and earthquakes have been trembling, making nuclear reactors go off, you can see the agendas are desperately pushing the carbon dioxide story and the saturation of nuclear power stations to go completely against the grain of every type of sustainable existence that might be possible for humanity. What a disastrous thing to try and massively recreate what happened with Fukushima and Chernobyl over again. The karma, the terrible karma, and to try and drive the whole world into a terrible war. Of course, this is all a much bigger thing to push this thing to occur, to push a much bigger agenda to ghost this world. And there's so much of a bigger picture going on beyond that. And it's just the surface of this. It's just scratching at the very surface of this much bigger story. It's such a big story, and it's so much to take on board. But if we leave Europe, the message to me was, our fate is sealed. And I said that a long time ago. I've been telling you that for a long time, as we could not understanding the link between Brexit and Planet X. And you're basically choosing a God here. That's what you're doing. Each time this cycle comes around, you have the right to choose a God. And with that God comes a soul, a connection to another part of the universe. And so you really have to ask yourself who you want to be and who you are. And you really need to track your intentions. Shout out, I love Jesus, Jesus. What does that mean? Does that mean you're good? Does that really mean you're good just to shout, I'm a Christian? It's a bit thin on the ground, isn't it? I'm a believer. I'm saved. You have to take this to you can see the direction this is going, and anyway, it's a short one, quick one. Well, maybe it's not that short, but I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to sound off, and we'll talk a lot more about this process. But really watch the Large Hadron Collider now, because that's what it's all about, and everything they're going to be doing is going to be in conjunction with that. They've prepared for this time for a long time, and this dimensional tear that they would wish to open with this device. And remember, they're just like asteroids, those little tiny particles. At the very first time when they started firing when they first fired this thing up on the 10th of the 9th of the 8th, and obviously when I say the 10th of the 9th of the 8th, I'm talking about the 10th of September, not the reverse way, because in America you say it the other way around. You say the 9th or 10th. Yeah. But you get my gist, don't you? But when they first fired it up, and they got it up to 11,000 cycles a second, in the 27-kilometer ring, and they were firing the hadron particles, and they were reaching, the speed of 99.99% of the speed of light in no time at all. It's not a question of speeding the light, it's what happens after you reach the speed of light, because you keep pouring energy into these particles, and they absorb, the energy's got to go somewhere, so they behave like they're massive boulders. I'm just going to get some water, excuse me. Oh. I didn't realise my throat is completely dried out. Racing, so let's speak, because I can see my lights going. but they become like massive boulders. And when you collide these, you're colliding them at effectively nearly double the speed of light, because they're both traveling at 99.99 speed of the sound. But they're not tiny particles. They are, in essence, tiny particles. It's that you fill them with so much energy that behaves like they've got enormous, great mass, which is why they have massive magnets, huge magnets that are using vast amounts of power. You can see, the last count, it was like 14 TeV. So it's like, I don't know how to say that in I think it's 14 trillion electron volts, but it's basically massive amount of power, and they're obviously absorbing all this power, which means these particles have been elevated in mass because of the energy inside of them to the equivalent of massive boulders, which are going to be collided and having a combined collision of very close to twice the speed of light, which is going to create a tear. This is a fission machine. This is the Atlantean gate that was used to open up Valles Marianas on Mars, the big detonation point on Mars. And this was also the point where, you look at Mars and you think, oh, you can see it, and it's how many seconds away in terms of light. I think the moon, they say the sun is something like 7 minutes away. So obviously Mars could be further than that, because it can be on the far side of the sun to where we are. But when it's on our side of the sun, we're all on the same side. I guess it's about the same distance away from we are to the sun. So probably about, I don't know what it is, but probably about sort of like somewhere but up to around about 7 minutes away. So that's where we see Mars, where it was 7 minutes ago. And the further we see out, we see what we see if something further and further it is away, the longer ago it occurred. And so, where is Mars now? Where do you think it is right now? You could, if you worked it out that it was 7 minutes away in terms of light speed, you could go back, in theory, 7 minutes, and you could you could hazard a guess that that's where it is, or 7 minutes ahead, and hazard a guess that that's where it is now, if where we see it is where it was 7 minutes ago. It is an assumption, isn't it? You don't truly know it's there, because if everything you look out there is a certain amount of distance or time occurred a certain amount of time ago, which means everything you're seeing beyond you, is not there now. And you are here now. You absolutely know that. Then it stands to follow that Mars and everything out there, if it's not there now, what you're seeing is not there now, then where is it now? Here and now is where it's all happening. Here and now is where it's all been happening. There is only now. Mars is right with us, right now. We're all stacked up on top of each other in this one big realm. Some realms are fantastic and exciting, and others are dead and have been destroyed because of decisions of their occupants. And this transition from one dimension to another is what this big story is all about. A migration. A holy Passover. Where human beings are bred into a place where they can become receptacles for another soul And this is, of course, is what I talk about when Colburn Bible talked about this. You know, when they came down from the mountains and the hiding place on that specific passage, their gods were gone. They had no memory of who they were. They were just jabbering fools. It become their egos. And it leads me to a little conclusion of something funny that happened, a silly little story that I want to leave you with. And it was just further back, coming down the Kennet River. I've got this key that operates the bridges, the turn bridges, these big bridges that kind of come up, and then you put the key in, and it was rush hour traffic, and I was trying to get through the bridge before rush hour, but it was so dark that I had to wait till the morning, and I was moored up in the actual dock, so I had to go. I couldn't stay there, and if someone had come through, I'd have been in the way where they would have had to moor up, so I had to go through, and it was rush hour, and I tried to wait to that point. It was the most convenient time, but there wasn't going to be a convenient time because there was queues and queues and queues of traffic trying to get through this bridge. So eventually I just thought, I've got to bite the bullet, and I pressed the button. Beep, 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 beep. And the bridge finally, the big came down, the gates or whatever, the big kind of like you get on a level crossing or train crossing. I don't really call them in America, but big level crossing. And they came down, and then beep, 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 beep. You've got to hold your finger on it the whole time, and the whole bridge comes up, and it's finally up, and that sort of stuff. And then I run down, and they're all just staring out their windows, all the people in their cars thinking, oh, this is quite interesting. But I run down to the boat, and I kind of chuck the ropes on board, and that sort of stuff. And I pushed the boat off, and I kind of came through, got the boat through under the bridge, and I pulled into the moorings, and I heard them hooting and that sort of stuff. And I was like, I'm coming, and I moored it up and I tied it up, and of course I was being rushed into it. Make a decision. I was like, I'm coming, which is the big 10-day thing that we're all being rushed into. And so I was just like, okay, and I moored it up and I tied it, and they're hooting, and I'm running out, and I was on the wrong side of the bridge, and the key was in the machine on the other side. And I was on the wrong side. And they were all just kind of looking over, just thinking, you're really not the sharpest sheep in the Shire, are you? How could you not see that? How could you not see that coming? How could you be so daft to be played like that? It will take everything to change this right now. Remember what the Colburn Bible says. Humanity is not judged for the mistakes it makes. It's punished for the mistakes it fails to rectify. If you go down this corridor, your chances of living to regret it will be very, very, very slim. It is as serious as that. Throw your beliefs at it and hide behind your ranting beliefs. Throw Jesus in it. Jesus is coming! No, guys. Christianity is not about that. It was not created for that. You know what Christianity has become now. You know what it's turning people into, more Christian soldiers. I know the people who follow in love and follow in faith, but those who follow in cold belief and just cannot access the wisdom within their own hearts and have to read it like a program, stuck in an old program, they cannot find and learn to take the stabilizers off and find the wisdom in their own hearts. To your own hearts be true. It's time to embody that wisdom and not rant it out in cold belief. Got to take this to a higher level. This is a very, very real situation you're coming into now, guys. And again, I often talk about the comments, and I keep meaning to go through the comments, and I just emotionally haven't been able to go there. And I've had a lot of trouble and a lot of emotional kind of like stories going on with various comments that has caused me it always, sometimes I know they're so important, because I know that so many of you make your comments and you say, and other people can read what you say, and some of you support what I say and some of you don't. But I never delete any comment, because I just think, well, at least you get a chance to say what you've got to say and express your feelings on that. Sometimes I can handle it, but sometimes I get so shot down and emotionally that to hold this together, just to hold this message, I'm not doing this for the money. I'm not doing it to try and build followers. I'm not doing it for advertising. I'm doing it because I believe that we can get through this, because this thing does not hit, because this thing flies by as regular as clockwork, and it has done for time immemorial. And this is just another one of its big flybys, and every single time it comes by, a massive story of the end of the world and all the rest of it, and we are engaged in all sorts of crazy wars just to keep the vibration low, so we can be used by lower frequencies, and that bodies can be taken over by lower frequencies to push lower agendas. It's humanity's chance to raise the vibration now. You know the woes of war. You're ready to take a higher step to a higher space. But great knowledge and great wisdom comes with great responsibility. And that was the message given to me. Show me the most beautiful image. I heard a concerto. I was at Reading Rock Festival, and I was selling my wares, and I kind of got chased out by security. It was years ago. It was like in 2007, 2008, and I was so at the end of doing that part of my life, really. It was just like the end, and then suddenly getting chucked out by security. And as soon as I got chucked out, I got a message from a friend saying, do you want to come and do an ayahuasca ceremony? It was just by chance, and I was just like, I've been chucked out. I probably would have said no, but I said, yeah, okay. And I went up, and it was in London somewhere. I won't say the location, but I went up and I did the ceremony, and as I sat down, he did it outside, and the whole ceremony, and the shaman did this whole thing where he put this big log outside in the woods, and we all crept out the woods after drinking a bit of ayahuasca, and we sat there in broad daylight as the sun set. And I heard this, as this shaman came behind me, giving me his rattle, with this like rattle, kind of carpe leaves behind my head. As he did it, the intensity of what was coming through came through, and I heard this concerto, and it sounded like a billion birds. And then suddenly I was shot out of my body, and I was out in space, looking at Earth, and I could see I couldn't see the sun, but I could see the dawn light of the sun just about to come up, and it was like a band of dawn light going around the Earth on one side where the sun was just about to come up. And this massive, beautiful concerto was singing, and it was all the birds singing in this band of dawn light. And then the sun shot over the horizon, and it said, "Here marks the end of an age. Here marks the beginning of an age. Great knowledge and great wisdom come with great responsibility." If you walk into this, if humanity walks into this, truly it can only hold itself to blame. Everything is being done to try and show you the truth. You have to start seeing through this. It takes courage to see the truth. You have to operate beyond your belief systems and start looking at the information, not the bullshit that people are throwing at this, but look at the evidence of what is occurring. Look at the reactors spilled open. Look at the friends around you that are dying of cancer. The question is the story of saturating the world with nuclear power stations to stop the volcanoes spewing carbon dioxide. A real feasible story. Or you're just being, it's not that they're bad, it's just that can you not see that climate change? And now GSM, there are religions where you take Christ off the cross and you put Earth on the cross, and you say that Earth is dying for your sins, and anyone who becomes an environmentalist, basically, effectively, is buying into a story that is turning them effectively into a like a monk, or a, you know, with a white collar, a vicar or whatever, of a belief system that is driving you into doing something which is completely illogical. I know James Lovelock says that nuclear power is good, and that all these people jump on board with it. Oh, the Gaia theory, and the Gaia theory was also fantastic, and then put it all together, and it equals saturate the world with nuclear power. It's just like, guys. I know my message goes on about this over and over, and I know that all of you that have seen this want something new, but guys, you want something new? You've got to get past this little bit. Are you starting to see how Brexit and Planet X all fit together on all sides of the Atlantic, all around the world? If Britain screws this up, our economy collapses, and they will have anger with that hunger that they generate. And that is the tinderbox that they need to create the karma. It is only karma that will allow the Large Hadron Collider to do what it's been designed to do, which is ghost Earth. And also open up a hole for those that want to escape this dimension to a higher space, because they cannot travel in spaceships or anything else of that amount of time and space. They haven't got the technology, they haven't got that capability to do that. They're looking for something else. They're not looking to go to somewhere new. They're trying to go back. They're trying to go backwards. So their attempt with this Large Hadron Collider is not to go forward. It's to go back and correct the terrible mistake of firing up the Large Hadron Collider from Mars. To be their own forefathers, to go back and come back as their own gods. It's a crazy story that we're in. And NATO, which is the force that is really driving all this, and where it comes from, this oceanic order that drives all of it, this oceanic order that we want to be part of, to access the intellectual property that it dangles in front of us, this carrot on the end of a piece of string, which drives all of this and has driven all of this from time immemorial. The same carrot that was dangled that caused the arrival of Martians, the reptilian order that came from Mars when that dimensional tear was opened. It's a big story, I'm afraid. And you might be too cool to look at it. You might be so entrenched in GSM or so entrenched in Extinction Rebellion, which just plays all completely into the hand of carbon dioxide and nuclear. Totally. I'm going to plug my computer in because I see it says 10%, and that's at a critical point. My battery is starting to get a little bit. Just try and catch it at the last minute as if we can, and then I'm going to say farewell. 1, 2, 3. No, it's not quite working. Sorry, I'm just going to click that out. Sorry about that. Like a grumbly stomach or something, didn't it? I don't know what that sounded like. I'll have to hear what that sounds. I play it back. But that's it. I'm not going to put any more overlays. Apologies. You've seen enough of the shots of Mars and things. I'll put I might make the I might put Valles Marianus as the actual thumbnail, because I'm not getting a chance to put that as an overlay right now. So I'll put that as a thumbnail for this video, because that's what this is all about. That's where this is all going. They're looking to bail out. And this is a whole thing. This was the first message I was given when I really started, when I actually started on the writing practice. I got on the plane, like I say, flew over the Large Hadron Collider, and they were firing it up. And my message started with me taken to Mars. I was even showing my ego on Mars, literally. And I said, "Is that my ego?" And the answer I was given was, "What makes you think it's your ego?" And he said, "You carry the load." He said, "It's not just you that works with that." He said, "Do you think it sleeps when you go to bed?" I was like, "Oh." I said, "It's not a reptile. It's not an alien. It's a human." And the answer I was given was no. I mean, it was terrified when I saw it, because I wasn't a body. I was just a point of consciousness, and I suddenly saw it, and I was shown, because he said, "Do you want to see it?" And I said, "You're talking about the ego." It happened the day before when I'd had this breakthrough of my writing. It was just like, oh my God. It's like everything you ever dreamed of happening, but also a bit scary. And it was just coming through me, and I was getting questions and answers. I said, "Are you talking?" Because I realized that the stuff was coming out of me was over and above anything that was going on. And I finally asked the question. I said, "Are you talking about ego?" And he said, "Do you want to see it?" And I was just like, I couldn't believe it. And then finally I wrote, "Yes, I want to see what the ego is." I thought, I've come this far. I've been on this investigation for long enough. Finally, I'm getting answers. I was like, yes. And it just went. I was just like, it's nothing. I was just like, oh, you know what I mean? And then the next morning I woke up with this splitting headache. And I think I've told you this story before, but I woke up with this splitting headache, went and got some water, go. I went back to my bed and thought, I can't do anything today. I put my head down and put my head straight into Mars. And there was a sea of beings. They were all Catholic monks. You could see they were literally all Catholic monks with these kind of old-fashioned head kind of like things, caps like things that go over, all in these black gowns. They looked sinister and gaunt and terrifying. And they were all cursing and hatred, bitter, into the ground. You couldn't see any of their face apart from one who was just sitting up, had his back to me, but pounding his head, and I could see behind him. And I said, "You're pounding my head, ain't you?" And he kind of like turned around, and he was just like trying to see where I was, and his beady, tiny little eyes, he just looked like the Pope, you know, the one who's got the really kind of weird, like, the terrifying looking one, the penultimate one from this one. And and I sort of looked at him, and he was just like, and I just said, as he was trying to see me, trying to with this rage, I said, "I can see you," and his face was just terror. The thing that I'd seen, what he was, that this being had been in my head, guising itself as me. Its thoughts trying to pretend that it was me. When I go into those dark places, and it offers these dark narratives of anger and everything else like that. And then when I came out, that's when I said, I saw it, they're not aliens, they're not la. And he said, "No, they're not aliens. They're not reptiles. They're not humans. They're souls. Just like you have a divine soul. They are divine souls on a divine journey. But they went down a cul-de-sac. And you're helping them come out of that cul-de-sac." And so I started realizing that though they had been ghosted so they could be used to destroy our world and other worlds, we also are trying to raise their vibration to bring them back into the table of life. Which means that what he tried to explain to me, that even though you might be taken by your ego, you are still in great service. That's what he explained to me. He said all ultimately souls, even those that are enduring absolute hell by experiencing the transmission of an ego soul through them, they are still completely in service to a soul above their own existence. We're all ultimately in service to something here, some to a higher self, some to an ego self. And there is no imposter because it's who you choose to tally. But at the end of this process, this will remove everything from humanity that is not directly connected to the human heart. And the human, each individual human will have its right to choose. No one else. You have to live and die with the consequences. So why shouldn't you have the right to choose? You can shout Jesus till the cows come home. But what does that mean? Jesus! I believe! I'm good! The higher realms are made of just pure emotion. In many ways, these realms are. When you put love into something and you feel it and you give something over, higher realms are made completely of that. You can't go to a higher realm, leaving this realm with terrible feelings and degradation. That's how you create a prison planet, bound by the guilt of the atrocities that you have caused. You are in a karmic equation that you emotionally cannot escape. The emotions that you think you want to kind of like overrun, you can never escape them. Regrets when you leave the plane of earth are massive, quite commonly, because you can see the lineage, the karmic lineage of what you have created. You so often come and reincarnate in the mess that you've created. Because emotionally, there's nothing else you can do. Nothing else you can do. There's nothing else you can do. You're bound by it. It is the fabric of what you truly are. Pure emotion. That is what the soul is. It's the embodiment of pure emotion. Don't leave here with regrets. Take care. Ciao.